I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their...
Gene Deal dropped a bombshell that rattled the foundations of hip-hop history. According to Diddy's former bodyguard, Shakur didn't just outshine Puff publicly, he humiliated him privately, sleeping with nearly every woman tied to Diddy. Think about the sting of that. In an industry driven by image and ego, it wasn't just about record sales or radio spins. This was a man stripped of his pride by his loudest rival. We picture Shakur in his prime, walking into a room like he owned it, flashing that grin, the world hanging on every word. And then we imagine Diddy in the shadows, seething, watching his women slip away to the man who mocked him on wax. That's not just rivalry, that's personal humiliation, the kind that festers until it feels like revenge is the only cure.
The boy Puffy called me though. Puffy called me back in the day. He called me, he was like, I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brother's,
This is where the conspiracy gets darker. What if Shakur's downfall wasn't just the product of a coast-to-coast feud? What if it was a vendetta, fueled by jealousy and wounded pride? We know Shakur had no problem turning private drama into public spectacle. Just listen to Hit 'Em Up. He name-checked Diddy, Biggie, and the whole East Coast camp, leaving no doubt where he stood. For Diddy, the mogul who wanted to be untouchable, that wasn't just an insult. That was war. Could that have been the moment where humiliation turned into something lethal? What would drive a man to allegedly orchestrate the end of a rival's life? Pride? Fear? Or the simple fact that Shakur was winning the battles both on stage and in the bedroom?
I don't think they are scared of him. I think they more so, they don't want him to embarrass their reputation and things that they've been known for. You understand?
When we peel back the layers, we find the whispers that have followed Diddy for decades. His secret meetings with Suge Knight. These weren't casual encounters, they happened at suspiciously precise moments. Just before Shakur's shooting in Las Vegas, and again after his passing. The timing alone is eerie, as if the conversations were part of a strategy no one was supposed to see. Imagine two of hip-hop's most ruthless power players in a private meeting. What could they possibly have been plotting? Damage control after Shakur's last explosive diss? Or was it the laying of groundwork for something already in motion? Whatever was said behind those closed doors has fueled decades of speculation, because nothing about those meetings feels innocent.
If that's part of the indictment, that's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak-offs. So that's federal. That could be that's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
And then there are the rumors about the so-called blackmail tapes. Insiders have whispered that Diddy, ever paranoid, may have secretly recorded conversations with Suge and others. If that's true, those recordings could be a time bomb. They could hold the keys to who knew what and when about Shakur's shooting. They could show whether Diddy was just protecting himself or pulling strings all along. And yet, no one has ever produced them. Were they destroyed, hidden away, or are they sitting in a vault somewhere, waiting to surface at the worst possible moment? In a world where careers have been shattered over leaked footage, the thought of those tapes is chilling. If they exist, they might be the one thing that could finally connect Diddy directly to the tragedy that shook the music world in 1996. But Gene Deal's account forces us to look not just at business or rivalry, but at the personal chaos behind Diddy's carefully curated image. Let's not forget, this is a man whose dating history reads like a tabloid timeline. From Jennifer Lopez to Cassie, from Kim Porter to Young Miami, he collected headlines as fast as he collected hits. And yet the pattern wasn't glamorous. It was messy, riddled with breakups, accusations, betrayal. Kim Porter once spoke about how she discovered he was expecting a child with another woman, while she herself was pregnant with his twins. Jennifer Lopez left him citing infidelity. Cassie, years later, would accuse him of abuse so severe it sparked a federal investigation. When we step back, it's not the love life of a smooth operator. It's the chaos of a man spiraling, trying to control what he couldn't keep.
When we got back to New York City, Wendy Williams was in Philly at a new station.
So imagine the picture in the mid-1990s. Diddy rising in New York, still clawing for dominance while Shakur storms the charts from the West Coast, sharper, louder, fearless. At the same time, Diddy is privately battling humiliation, his women being lured by the very man who's trashing him publicly. The control he wanted to project was slipping. No wonder insiders now describe him as increasingly unstable, pacing the halls with paranoia, unable to separate business from vendetta. Was this the moment the unbalanced mogul we see today began to take shape? When pride and obsession started to blur into something much darker? And as the decades rolled on, the shadows only deepened. The whispers about Diddy's role in Shakur's end never really went away. In fact, they've only grown louder in recent years. Mopreme, Shakur's own brother, has openly admitted he doubts Diddy's denials. He remembers Diddy reaching out years after the shooting, trying to clear his name, but Mopreme wasn't convinced then, and he's even less convinced now. Add to that the testimony of Dwayne Keith D. Davis, the street figure who has openly claimed Diddy once offered millions to take out Shakur and Suge Knight. Court transcripts show Diddy's name surfacing again and again in these accounts. 47 mentions in one recording alone. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern.
I feel mad still that good with my brother. First of all, that's the...
And if pride and humiliation really were at the heart of this, then the story isn't just about the East Coast-West Coast war. It's about a man who couldn't stand to be made a fool of, who couldn't stomach seeing his women choose another, who saw his empire threatened by one of the most magnetic forces hip-hop has ever known. When we trace the timeline, Shakur's relentless taunts, the alleged private betrayals, the suspicious meetings, the whispered tapes, it all begins to look less like coincidence and more like a plan waiting for its moment. The question that hangs in the air isn't whether Diddy was hurt, it's whether his humiliation was powerful enough to spark one of the most shocking conspiracies in music history. What happened after Shakur was gone is almost more revealing than the night of the Vegas shooting itself. Insiders like Gene Deal have painted a portrait of Diddy unraveling in real time, paranoid, suspicious, jumping at shadows. One former associate recalled how he would constantly shuffle his inner circle, hiring and firing with no warning, as if every single person might betray him. We hear stories of him demanding that phones be confiscated at meetings, of him pacing hallways in his mansions long after midnight, convinced someone was listening. Was this just the burden of protecting a multi-million-dollar empire? Or was it the shadow of guilt creeping closer every year?
Are you surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised. I experienced some of those things. Witnessed violence.
We can see the spiral in the way he tried to control the story around Shakur's passing. Whenever reporters pressed too hard, there were sudden denials, quick pivots, and at times, bizarre behavior that suggested he was desperate to steer the narrative. Years later, Mopreme Shakur remembered the strange phone call where Diddy personally tried to convince him he had nothing to do with his brother's shooting. Why would the most powerful mogul in hip-hop bother reaching out privately to a grieving family if he truly had no involvement? It felt less like reassurance and more like obsession. What if Diddy's greatest enemy wasn't Shakur, but his own conscience? An inner voice he could never silence, no matter how much success he piled on top. The paranoia seemed to bleed into his relationships as well. By the 2000s and 2010s, Diddy had become notorious not just for his lavish parties, but for the way those closest to him often turned into enemies. Lawsuits, breakups, public feuds. They all tell the story of a man unable to keep loyalty intact. Cassie's lawsuit in 2023, with its disturbing claims of control and violence, was just one more glimpse into a mind that had grown consumed with domination. When we place that alongside the old whispers about Shakur, a pattern emerges. A man terrified of losing control, willing to do anything to maintain it. Was this paranoia born from guilt, or was it simply the cost of surviving at the top of the most cutthroat business in America?
Card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
Now I'm saying what I'm saying.
What can't be ignored is how the music itself became the weapon that cut deepest. Shakur's Hit 'Em Up wasn't just another diss track. It was a nuclear strike on reputations. He didn't hold back, dragging Diddy's name into the fire right alongside Biggie and the entire bad boy camp. In an era when authenticity defined status, being called out in such a raw, aggressive way wasn't just insulting, it was a declaration that Diddy was weak, that his empire could be mocked in front of millions. Fans still debate whether it's the harshest diss track ever recorded, and that says everything about the impact it left on those it targeted. The fallout from that single track was massive. Suddenly, the East Coast-West Coast feud wasn't just whispered about in magazines. It was broadcast on radio, blaring out of car windows, replayed in clubs, and analyzed in endless interviews. Everywhere Diddy went, he couldn't escape the echo of Shakur's venomous words. This wasn't a private rivalry anymore, it was public theater, with Diddy painted as the villain on the receiving end. For someone already struggling to control his narrative, the humiliation must have cut like a blade.
Chaotic, it's hard to actually figure out what's what, but it's becoming clearer. It's becoming clearer and clearer. But
And this is where the whisperers of $1 million bounty come into play. Court filings and street-level confessions have tied the infamous promise of mother. If true, that song wasn't just entertainment, it may have been the spark that led to blood in the streets of Las Vegas. Imagine the weight of being laughed at, disrespected, and publicly embarrassed on the global stage, and then realizing your power is slipping. Would it be so hard to believe that someone in Diddy's position might lash out in the most extreme way possible? For Shakur, the track was about dominance, a way to cement himself as untouchable. But for Diddy, it may have been received as a challenge to his very survival in an industry where perception was everything. The mogul's entire persona was built on the idea of control, of orchestrating the culture rather than being dictated to by it. When the facade cracked under the weight of Shakur's mockery, it wasn't just about words. It was about empire, pride, and a sense of authority he could no longer fully claim. The streets saw the blow for what it was, a humiliation that couldn't be ignored.
Who you made love with?
Diddy, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes.
The chilling part is how closely music and personal grudges intertwined during this period. Diss tracks were never just songs, they were coded threats, strategic plays in a dangerous game where reputations and lives were on the line. Hit 'em Up turned an already tense rivalry into a powder keg, and from that moment forward, the line between entertainment and real-world consequences disappeared. The stage became the battlefield, the lyrics became weapons, and the aftermath left scars that the hip-hop world still hasn't healed. Then there's the mystery of the so-called silence fund. Industry chatter has long suggested that Diddy kept aside as much as $2 million, not for investments or flashy purchases, but to keep people quiet. Whispers say this fund was used to smooth over witnesses, investigators, and anyone who might connect him to that fateful night in Las Vegas. It explains a lot, doesn't it? How evidence has vanished, how key figures have changed their stories, how certain people who once hinted at knowing something suddenly went silent. Could money really have kept a lid on one of the biggest scandals in music history for nearly 3 decades?
Trying to find her, and her attorney has said that she may not be willing to come and testify anyway. So, be interesting. Okay, we're moving on.
The missing witness in his current federal trial adds fuel to the fire. Prosecutors have admitted they can't track down one of the individuals expected to testify with very personal and explosive details. That absence feels all too familiar, echoing the strange disappearances and sudden silences that have haunted the Shakur case for years. If we connect the dots, the pattern is chilling. Critical voices either vanish, lose credibility, or walk back their claims. And each time, Diddy somehow stays one step ahead, his name never fully tied down in court, his empire battered but still standing. But as time wears on, the cracks are harder to ignore. Keef D's arrest and his repeated claims that Diddy once offered millions for Shakur and Suge Knight have made headlines again. Prosecutors even revealed transcripts where Diddy's name was mentioned almost 50 times in connection to that night. And while he continues to deny it, insisting the stories are ridiculous and pure fiction, the consistency of the accusations from street figures, insiders, and now family members like Prem Shakur can't be brushed aside so easily. Too many people across too many years have said the same thing. Now, with Diddy facing federal charges unrelated to Shakur but just as explosive, the timing feels impossible to ignore. We're watching a man who once seemed untouchable finally facing consequences, and it raises a dangerous question. If his empire is crumbling now, what else might come tumbling out with it? Could investigators, already digging into his private life, stumble on the secrets that have kept the Shakur case unsolved for nearly 30 years? Or will those secrets remain buried under layers of silence, payoffs, and fear?
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if you listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
The psychology of it all is fascinating and terrifying. Diddy, the showman, has always thrived on spectacle. But behind closed doors, insiders described a man haunted, one who would suddenly turn quiet when Shakur's name came up, one who seemed almost obsessed with rewriting history in his favor. For years, he managed to dance between power and paranoia, between wealth and whispers. But how long can a man run from his own reflection? What if every accusation, every lawsuit, every shocking headline of the last 2 years is not the beginning of his downfall, but the end of a spiral that started the night Shakur was gunned down? The walls may finally be closing in. Federal investigators are circling, witnesses are being called, old alliances are splintering, and with Shakur's family openly hiring high-powered attorneys to revisit the case, the story that's been frozen in time since 1996 might finally crack open. If the silence fund really existed, if the blackmail tapes really are out there, if even a fraction of what insiders have whispered turns out to be true, then the most carefully hidden scandal in hip-hop could explode in full daylight. So we have to ask, is the truth about Shakur's fate about to be revealed? And will it drag Diddy down with it? Could this be the final chapter for a man who built his empire on bravado, but may have hidden it on a foundation of secrets and shame? Let us know what you think in the comments, because this story is far from over. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the most shocking truths are the ones hiding in plain sight.